it's so obvious to everyone, well, hold on, it's human-induced climate change. You can't then increase the population by 60%. How can you possibly? Our Prime Minister says we've got some very good targets for reducing carbon emissions. We are in the world, we understand, the greatest emitters of carbon per capita in the world. How can we possibly increase our population by 60% whilst we reduce that? That's impossible. So that's the difference, I believe. Now that it's obvious around the world that we have a problem, people are seeing it, by the way. We're seeing the results of climate change. And once we link that to too many people, which I think is pretty obvious, I think human beings will be sensible, and just as they judge the number they want in their family, they'll make a judgment about the number we want in each country and the number we want in the world. Thank you.
Dick, you spoke about farming wealth right now. An article in Scientific American of June last year said Australia has only about 50 years of phosphate left. Now, phosphate is essential for our infertile soils. What does this mean for the starvation of the future of us in Australia and for your young grandchild?
Well, that's what we want our scientists to tell us, and I think our scientific community's been irresponsible. I really do. One of the questions I keep asking everyone is, well, where's the paper that shows that we can have enough food for 36 million, considering we're told by the scientists that we're going to run out of phosphate, we're going to have peak oil, and with climate change we're going to have less efficiency in cropping. There's no paper. Now, one of the reasons is the scientists have been busy on matters in relation to climate change. The other thing is I'm told that most scientists work for the government, and you'd want to be a pretty brave scientist, a few do, but not many, to come out and say there's a real problem here. So the figures you've given, I've heard of them, they're just absolutely amazing. Phosphate, which gives us our incredible productivity of crops, is going to run out. Oil, from gas I should say, where we're making fertilisers, everyone knows we're going to go to peak. Now, of course, what we could do is say, don't worry, always in the past, we're so ingenious, we will solve the problem. And we may. And I can tell you now, we can actually have 100 million in Australia. This is how we'd do it. We'd put 5 Dubais between Sydney and Cairns, 5 Dubais. We would mine every bit of uranium we have. We would mine every bit of coal. We would desalinate water to run crops in glass houses. We could go to 100 million for probably 20 or 30 years. What would happen then? It would be a catastrophe. And secondly, why would you want to do it? What's wrong with 22 million? What's wrong with Aussie families having 1, 2 or 3 kids? Nothing. We just have to be sensible. Yes. By the way, the reason there's a camera crew here, we've sold a documentary to the ABC. When you read Overloading Australia, there's a special chapter on the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. Why don't they cover this important issue? Why haven't they in the past? And that's very interesting. But the very fact that the ABC's agreed to buy this documentary on climate change, on population, which will be hopefully on air in about August or September, that's showing that there's a change, and that's very worthwhile. Next question.
It's a very big issue. How, and with a lot of components to it, how do you see chunking it up so that it meets everybody's own individual agenda? Because you've got the farmers, you've got the capitalists, you've got the health reform, you've got social reform, you've got the environmental scientists, you've got urban and regional planning. There's a lot in there. How do you see that being chunked up? And how do you see the average Joe or Josephine getting their bits forward? Is the Australian Institute gathering data?
Yeah, I think what's going to happen, I think if we cause enough public interest, our politicians will at least set up an inquiry into the sustainability of Australia, how many people we can accommodate in Australia. That'll be the best thing. I think once that paper, and it might take 6 or 12 months to find out, to get the best scientists with the best information, I believe people will be absolutely rattled. People will be scared. People will be frightened. Because our children today, I think, will be affected. And I believe we have enough sense in a democracy to do something about it. It's not the hardest thing in the world. We are addicted to growth. Let me tell you, last year we grew by about 400,000 people. That's nearly the size of Tasmania. Now, Tasmania has 3 public hospitals, 3 huge hospitals. That means we've got to have 3 new hospitals every year. We haven't got that. Tasmania has 75 schools. We have to have 75 new schools every year. We don't have 75 new schools. The reason the health professionals... I live in New South Wales. I love New South Wales. It's a great state. 10 years ago, we weren't complaining about our hospitals. We are now because we have too many people. We're told in Sydney, if you live in Ku-ring-gai, I'm a free-range kid. I lived in a backyard. I had a backyard. A free-range kid. We now have battery kids. Battery kids, because in Ku-ring-gai, where we used to pride ourselves with our backyard, a few spare blocks of land, you could build a cubby house, disappear into the bush, the council has just made a decision, we don't want to have home units, we don't want to have high-rise. The state government said, that's irresponsible. Sydney's going to go from 4 million to 7 million, so you have to have high-rise. Now, hold on, isn't this a democracy? Who said we were going to go to 7 million? Oh, well, it's just happening. And so we should be so stupid to lose the things which are so important for us. It's ridiculous. Now, people say, but we have an obligation to let people from more crowded countries come here. First of all, when it comes to asylum seekers and refugees, I agree. Personally, I believe we should double. I think we have about 12,000 humanitarian intake each year. I think it should be 24,000. It has basically no effect on our population at all. I think that's important. But what's the use of having people come from other crowded countries to come to this country where in 20, 30, 40 years' time their kids don't have enough food? That is completely irresponsible, doesn't help anybody. The other thing we're doing, remember the Colombo plan? We would bring people from so-called third world countries or developing countries here to be educated, and they'd go back and they'd run the hospitals, they'd build the dams. What do we do now? A large part of our population increase is students coming here who get educated and then stay here. We are stealing doctors and engineers from countries that need them and bringing them into Australia. We're bludgeoners. It's great for us, but no good for the world. We should have a humanitarian project, and that's not by taking the best people from other countries and bring them in here. We can train our own people. Yes. Yep. Oh, sorry, back there.
Great stuff, thank you very much. I should identify myself out of fairness. My name's Jane Singleton from the Australian Reproductive Health Alliance, and we work in Australia and the region. And I'd love to hear you talk about why there is such a reluctance to talk about sustainability, development, and the enormously important relationship to family planning. Why won't we talk about it?
Well, we know, first of all, when I asked one of the politicians, why aren't we talking about population? He said 2 reasons, Dick. Rupert Murdoch and Cardinal Pell. Oh. So I said, explain. And he said, well, Cardinal Pell, the Catholic Church, they don't like to talk about contraception. The amazing thing is that I thought Italy was the home of the Catholic Church. It's got a reducing population, so they're either not doing it or they're not taking any notice of the Pope. I'm not sure which one. But, and the other comment, of course, about Rupert Murdoch. But I wrote to Cardinal Pell and I said, look, I'm told that one of the reasons we don't have a population policy now, politicians are scared to talk about population, is that they'll lose your vote. The amazing thing was he wrote me this wonderful letter back saying I was completely mistaken. We don't have enough people. We should have more.